Hello, brothers and sisters. The title of the message today is Being Led by the Hand of the Lord. Subtitle number 3, Even Among the Dead Bodies. We left Gwangju during the daytime. We are afraid. Wouldn't this bus stop on the way? Would the North Korean soldiers follow us and stop our bus? We were so afraid. We forgot the flow of time running unpaved street for hours. I skipped dinner. I got off the bus and walked miles all night, and I arrived at home in the morning time. Wow, I could save my life. I can forget all the fears now. Suppose I could not take a bus that night. I could have captured by North Korean Communist Army in Gwangju. My parents could not hear anything from their son. They could have fallen into the restlessness. The boarding house was cousin brother's house, but during the wartime, everything became unpredictable. I was born when my father became 60 years old. My mom had a daughter, and after 13 years passed, she prayed for 100 days, and she got a son. That's me. So suppose I could not come down home during the wartime, how fearful it would be for them. Thus my father thought he would send his son back to school again after the war is over. But my father did not send me back to school even the war was over. My friends went back to school, but my father did not send me back to school again. The war lasted for 3.5 years. I could not go back to school anymore, back to Gwangju again. So many people got so much damages during the war time. My own loss is so incomparably petty, but it was just the process of my life so that I could reach to the present blessing. That's why I look back at my past. As I lost the opportunity to receive further education, and it was a hopeless occasion for my life. But God did not desert me in that hopeless state, but He led me to His holy plan. I did not know His will, so I started to study even during the wartime. I studied Chinese books, but later I studied English. I made up my mind to restart my school. But as I came down with a serious tuberculosis, I couldn't do anything. My path was thoroughly and perfectly shut off. I spent 3 years in the hospital, and I became 20 years old. When I became 23 in April, my father passed away at the age of 83. My sister, who is older than me by 13 years, who stayed at my home after her husband died, she also passed away and left 3 daughters behind. I, as the head of the family, began to carry a heavy burden of supporting my mother and 3 nieces. The wish of a little boy to continue to study was smashed by the whirlwind and tuberculosis. The heavy burden of reality to support my family was blocking my way like a huge rock. I could not think about anything else. During those days, qualification examination was not available through which I could get a diploma. So my hope was cut off right there. From that time on, I could not think about restarting my study. A long time passed without any hope, without any hopeful relationship. I could not even dream of studying again. But one day, Lord called me through my friend and let me study theology. I cannot think it's the calling from the earth, but I have no other way but to think it came to me from heaven. So far, I have lived here on earth for 82 years. I have watched so many things, but I have never heard about such thing in the world before. That day was not written on the calendar. It was not the voice of human being. Maybe that's the reason why I don't remember about such an important day. I just remember it was 20 days before I went up to Seoul. Maybe that day was not on my calendar. There was no possibility at all. There was no promise about tomorrow at all. At that time, Lord called me. I did not have any work on my own, so I helped the work of rehabilitation youth group program in our village. With the help of village friends and juniors, I helped funerals or various kinds of feasts in our village. One day it was snowy and windy. One young lady committed suicide, so we youth group members buried her in the deep mountain and came down. As I did not have my own work, those things were rewarding things. From the village feast and the work of mortuary in the village, I gave my helping hand. It was later developed into new village movement, but because of the work of national rehabilitation movement, I cleaned the village street and alleyway, taught night school in order to drive out illiterates from our village. As I did not have my own work, everything was exciting. Moses received God's calling at the age of 80 when he was taking care of a herd of his father-in-law, the Jethro, at the west side of the wilderness. Peter received Lord's calling when he could not catch any fish at night. We cannot jump to the conclusion that everyone will be the same. I received God's calling in such a way because my ego had to be finished up. I used to be looking back at the past, even I started a new work, when I have no possibility at all, but I could move forward. From Gwangju to Namchang, Haenam, the road was not paved at all. It was very common in Korea during those days. I don't remember exactly how many hours it took. I only remember that I took a bus during the daytime and took off the bus around the sunset in Namchang. I followed other people at the age of 13 because I knew I had to risk my life in escaping communists. I don't remember that I could stop on the way. As I look back, how could I walk over 30 kilometers without stopping? It's beyond imagination. Walking on the sand was so difficult because my feet kept falling into the sand. It was double difficulty. Road with pebbles were very difficult to walk because my sneakers were too thin. My feet hurt. If there were rocks, it was dangerous to climb up. The moon was bright and everybody was quiet. We were just like the secret agents who were supposed to carry out the important and secret mission along the coastline, avoiding other people's eyes. There were many people, but nobody talked. We all talked just looking at the person who went right before ourselves quietly. Everybody was walking hurriedly and everybody was exhausted. We had no room to talk, as if we were chased by other people. All we had to do was just walking fast. We didn't know the way, but we just walked and walked. We were making our own road. The road was not prepared for us yet. Nobody was asking, are you going the right direction? Are we going the wrong way? Nobody was against just going forward. The only thing that we had was mutual tenacity. As North Korean Communist Army is coming down, we were so afraid we had to go home as soon as possible. That's all. Since I received calling from the Lord, I had never looked back or hesitated. I'm not a man of strong willpower, but it was because I had just only one way. Those people who have no way make their own way because they have to go. Lord's calling is as such. There is calling, but there is no way yet. The people of Israel simply had to come out of Egypt, and Jehovah God told them to come out. But they had no way. They were the first group of people. The path they walked was the way just. Those people who received calling make their own way. They have to go unknown path. If there is the way, God never calls, because those people can go their way looking at the map. Whenever Jehovah God started his new work, he calls people. He's calling people because he wants to start a new work. Lord Jesus was sent to achieve a new work. He had no way before God, before him, except himself. There was no way. Where he walked was his way. He himself was the way. In John chapter 14, verse 6. Apostles walked the path where there was no way, but the path they walked became the way. Those people who have no way make their own way. Subtitle number 3, even among the dead bodies. The village where I was born, Imokni Noha Island, was far from the south coast of Wando Island. It was a small island, but the business was booming. So much money was circulated. The nickname of our village was a small Mokpo city. My father guaranteed his friend's debt in his own hometown, Posong, by mistake. His business went bankrupt because of that. He was wandering around here and there, went all the way down to Jeju Island, looking for a place to settle down. After 13 years passed, he settled down at Noha Island because that place was appropriate for running business. There was a saying in that village, those people who came into our village from other places make a lot of money for 10 years, but after 10 years, they become bankrupt and leave our village. Maybe they have observed in many people's examples. So some people leave our village after 9 years before they become bankrupt and move to Mokpo. I also have seen some people leaving our village after they become bankrupt. I was not an exception. I was born there. I thought I could be an exception, for the consequence was the same. When I was 6 years old, I moved to that marketplace, but I came down with tuberculosis at the age of 16. I finally went bankrupt completely and came out of that village. One thing I remember is that one large snake came into our store before we ran business a little less than 10 years. It was a dark omen. But as there was many snakes in our village, I thought it made a mistake in coming into our store, and I just chased that snake away. But something bad happened at our house in a row. Maybe it was the signal of bad omen and the flare. Village people said it is because of the land shape of our village. If you look at Noah Island from Bogil Island, it looked as if a cow is grazing grass and regurgitate with the yoke on the neck and sit down. And the area where the business is booming, many stores are gathered together, is just like the stomach part of the cow. Cows graze grass, sit down, regurgitate, digest, and then they excrete. That's their habit. As if cow's stomach becomes full, it excretes. Those people who came into Noah Island from outside, if they accumulate fortunes, then they become bankrupt. Believe it or not, that happens in so many merchants' experiences. We had no other way but to admit it. But in my case, because of the trick of the destiny, I received Lord's calling. I was moved to soar by the wings of the eagle. A new life was started. Suppose my store did not become bankrupt, I would not leave my hometown. When other people's life was moved by the whirlwind of destiny, God disciplined me to obey right away, and He moved me by the wings of eagle. When the angels of destiny was carrying out his evil work, my God also worked in a wise way. God never gets a deficit. Satan thought if he gives the fruit of good and evil to people, people will criticize God and leave God. But God saved those people who left God and wandering around the world and let them conquer Satan instead. That's why our God received the praise that Jehovah God has outstanding name than any other gods. I have never heard of anyone who, among those people who went bankrupt and left that village, could become recovered. Maybe I'm the only one who became so prosperous, walking a new and living way, the mysterious way which people of the world have never heard of. As we lead our life, there are so many things that are ambushing somewhere and attack us. I met a man who was doing the face reading, and he predicted, as your name was wrong, you will receive operation before you become 30 years old in your abdomen part. As my stomach was so weak, I worried about it. I tried to change my name, but in government office, people said it's so difficult, so I couldn't even start it to change. As my mini mall went bankrupt, I could not pay any attention. I went up to Seoul at the age of 27 to go to theological college and engage in my ministry. I forgot about it. One day I was reminded of the face reader's words, but I was already far over 30 years old. I also remember the famous Chinese herb medicine doctor. He was checking my destiny because he studied fortune-telling books. He said to me, if only you can survive over 30 years old, you will make a great success later. God covered me up with a huge rock. Even in the hurricane hit me in the wilderness, with his big hand, he covered me up. Sometimes God makes me escape even from my negative destiny and save his people. I cannot deny this kind of faith. I could barely save my life from tuberculosis, but there have been many times of danger of reinfection. But even the curse of my destiny, even among the germs, even under the death, I could save my life in a miraculous way. In Korea, there is a saying, he can escape from the raindrops when he's running without an umbrella, because he can run escaping among all the raindrops. That's a miracle. In my hospital room, there were another man. His age was same as mine. Even he received treatment, the germs did not disappear. His environment and my environment were almost the same. The one who took care of him was a grandfather, but actually he was his father. He got a son when he became an old man, so he called himself as grandpa rather than father because he thought it was bashful thing. He let his son get married at the age of 19, but as soon as he came down with the tuberculosis, his wife ran away. That bad disease made him vomit blood and lie down in bed. His wife and his mother-in-law came home and packed up their suitcase and went to her own home without looking back at him. That 19-year-old boy met one lady who was his first woman and the last woman, but separated in a miserable way. But who could blame her? 19-year-old young lady met a tuberculosis patient husband, and her future looked so dismal. So before too late, she had to leave her husband without saying any words. When I heard this story, my heart seemed to be frozen. Even it may be inevitable, they had such cold-blooded heart, and her husband became so miserable. When I came back to hospital after staying at my house for 2 months, I heard that he already passed away. After I came out of the hospital, I wanted to take a rest for about 1 year in a quiet place with fresh air. So I spent my time in Bugam Temple on the mountaintop of Bogil Island. As I was staying at the temple room, another patient came in. To the place where one patient stays, another patient always follows. Is that the customary? He's one of my neighbors. He was coughing so hard, he was still suffering from tuberculosis. But there is no extra room in the temple, so I had to use the same room together. The room that we were using was just like a barn with soil wall. There was a small window 20 by 20 centimeters big. There was a door 1 meter by 70 centimeters. But in order to enter into the room, we had to pass by a dark barn. The only channel that light came in was just a small window. The size of the room was 2 meter by 2 meter. The ceiling was so low, we had to bend our back. It was a small room, only 2 people can lie down. It was just like a cave with the soil all around. I was afraid of reinfection, but as we were neighbors, I couldn't say to him, go out of this house. Or I could not leave that place abruptly. His family offered money to that temple. The monk could not refuse him in staying at the temple room, and I could not say anything. There's a Korean saying, if the monk doesn't like the temple, he must leave. That was my situation. But the lady who cooked for food for us did not like him, so he went back home, and a little later, he died. All around me, there were germs and dead bodies. If you look at the rotten fish, there are so many flies flying around. How my weak body could survive without being reinfected? Most of my acquaintances said, is he still alive? It was quite natural for them to say that. I got resurrected from the hell. I was rushing here and there under the rain shower of destiny. Who is performing such kind of drama? He's an amazing producer of mysterious drama. He's our God. People talked about evil tricks of Satan who played with our destiny. Fortune tellers talk about our destiny using the mysterious book of prophecy. Are they really true or not? I don't exactly, so I cannot say anything clearly. Nobody can explain with anything exactly. Nobody is free from that position in a perfect way. But I found out the fact, if God is for us, who can be against us? Who will bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? Who is he that condemns? Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Book of Romans chapter 8, 31 through 35. Thank you. Hallelujah. May God bless every one of you. Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you.